Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I've been getting a lot of really good questions lately about jerkbaits, so I'm doing my best to get you answers for each of these. And I recently got a question from a viewer asking about diving lips and how important the diving depth of your jerkbait is. And the real answer to this is I think there's times where your diving depth is absolutely important, and I think there's times where diving depth is not extremely critical. Generally speaking, that has to do with how deep of the water is that you're fishing. So, what I mean by that is if you're in 4 foot of water and you've got a jerkbait that's diving from 2 to 3 feet, even close to the bottom, those fish have a lot less distance to have to go. Diving depth, a lot of times for me, is much more important as I get deeper. And what I mean by that is if I'm fishing 20 foot of water, there are times where a jerkbait can be really good. But in those circumstances, I'm probably going to choose a jerkbait that can get me down to 10, 12, 14 foot of water versus one that's going to be in 4 or 6 feet because the fish are less likely to come get your bait from a further distance away. Now, that also kind of comes into play during the season. During the summer months, it's not unusual at all to get fish to come out of 20 feet of water for a jerkbait that's 4, 6, or 8 foot down. Heck, you can get them to come eat at top water. But during your colder water periods or when you have fish in a lot less of an active mode, so post front conditions, if you don't get your bait down to those fish, a lot of times they're not going to come eat it, especially if you're trying to draw them out of really deep water. So, from that standpoint, your diving lip is very important in terms of getting you down deeper. Now, there are a few things that you need to recognize. And just for examples here, I'm going to show you the Berkeley Stunnas. You know, they've recently come out with, they came out with the Berkeley Stunna 112 and the Berkeley Stunna 112 plus one, so a little bit deeper diving lip. And now they've also just come out with the Berkeley Stunna 112 plus two. So you can see as they get you add the plus one, the plus two, the diving lips get bigger on those, and that's simply to help you get to deeper diving depths. So in this case, the regular Stunna 112, you're looking at 3 to 6 foot of water. The 112 plus one, you're looking in that 6 to 10 foot range. And then, super sharp Fusion 19 hooks. As you get to the plus two, you're talking about 10 to 14 feet of water, which is very deep for a jerkbait. And there's a lot of times where this is the one you want if you're talking about getting down deeper to the fish. They've also recently done the same thing with their smaller Stunna 100. So you can compare the 100 to the 112. You can see if I hold it without getting the hook stuck in me, it's smaller. And then they've also come out now with the 100 plus one to get you into that 6 to 10 foot range. Because the reality is your smaller jerkbaits uh, are the ones that are harder to get down to your deeper depths. So to have that plus one range to get my little Stunna 100 down close to 10 foot is really critical at times. Because as we know right now, your smaller jerkbaits are definitely generating a lot of bites. You know, the fish are really getting used to that 4.5 inch range. So to have a smaller profiled one is critical, and to be able to get it down deeper is even better. I mean, this is, in my opinion, small jerkbaits are one of the hotter trends that we're going to see going into next year. So to have the plus one version that they just came out with is going to be very, very key for me. But getting back to the diving lips, it's so critical to be able to choose one that runs perfect. And in my opinion, generally what you're looking for is to have your jerkbait run 3 to 4 feet above that fish. So if you're fishing in 12 foot of water, I'm going to go with that plus one version to get me down 8, 9 foot and keep it right above the fish's heads. To be able to be fishing in 17 feet now and use the plus two to get me down to that range, really critical. Now, I do want to point out a couple of things as well when you're talking about using some of these deeper diving models. In my opinion, as your lip on your jerkbait gets bigger, you're better off casting it out and reeling it down to that desired depth. If you were to start out and just start snapping this like a traditional jerkbait right off the bat, it takes you a little longer to get to the diving depth. And the reason for that is that erratic motion on the jerk doesn't always work to your advantage in terms of getting the extreme depth that you want out of it, because sometimes it'll jerk up, sometimes it jerks to the side. If you put this right into the reeling motion where you're just straight retrieving it, that bait's going to dive just like a crankbait and get down to its maximum depth. So for me, I always will start off with a handful of reel handle turns, really to try to get that bait down to where I want it to go, especially when I'm working some of these deeper diving jerk baits. If I were just to start with the Stunna 112, probably in that case, I'm just going to start retrieving it in a jerk bait style mode with your jerk, jerk, pause type action. And that's just because I'm going to be fishing this generally in 6 or 7 foot of water or less. That's kind of when I'll stay with the traditional jerk bait. I would be willing to bet you the majority of the time I'm throwing that +1, because that just seems to be like the sweet zone for me when you're talking about jerk baits. But it's really important to recognize now that there are a lot of deeper diving models in different sizes in your jerk baits. I'll put links for each of these to the Tackle Warehouse so that you can check them out for yourself. But the reason I'm making a video about this has to do with the fact that you have these options now. In the past, what a lot of people would do is swap out hooks or use lead wrap to really try to increase some of those diving depths. And those still work. It's a good option, but the companies out there are making versions to achieve those depths without having to do anything to your baits, and have that customization potentially actually work against you. If you were to upsize the hooks, yes, that might help you get to a deeper diving depth, but those bigger hooks also create more drag and you're killing the action on your bait. The same thing goes for adding weight to your jerk baits. Anytime you do that, you're not going to get the same motion. And it's just really important to me to understand that the companies are achieving these depths without having to do any of this customization. In the past, we were stuck with a handful of jerk baits, and in order to get your bait down to 10 foot, you had to do those things. Well, we don't have to do that anymore. It's already being done for us straight out of the package. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love now with this full Berkeley Stunna line. I talk about them a lot because I really like them. I've got a ton of videos done where you can see me catching fish on the Stunnas. I mean, heck, Hank Cherry did help design it. I think he won back-to-back classics, if I'm recalling correctly, on the Stunna. So we know how good of a fish catcher it is. But for me now to be able to get my bait down and achieve some really deep depths without having to make any modifications is valuable to me. So I'm really excited to be able to put the 112 plus 2 to work. They also came out with a bunch of new colors, a little Wakasagi like that, one of my favorites. Um, just very, very key. I'm excited to be using these. I'm excited to get started on the season. We're only like a couple of weeks away. It's amazing to me how fast the off season always seems to go. I always think I'm going to come down here and get everything organized, get everything put away. And I like the season's upon us right now. And I have not done much of what I wanted to get done. Uh, just sitting down here, daydreaming of catching fish. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate all the support out there. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.